everything is still dead and dry here around us. We haven't had a drop of rain yet. Temperatures are soaring. Today is probably going to be almost 40 degrees. So very warm, very dry, very windy. Let's see what we can find today. We have long been promising a series discussing the various trees and plants in South Africa and the areas which we move in. Here around me, and I'll give you a closer look at it just now, it's what we call a white syringa. These are a bunch of small trees, typically grows on deep sandveld. You can see here around us, very open, very flat, very sandy soil in which we sitting at the moment, and these trees love growing in deep sandy soils. As you can see here, the wild syringa is a smallish to medium sized tree, grows into a nice big flat top tree if you let it grow out. You can see there in the background typical sandveld area, in this particular area where we are. All those trees there in the background are all wild syringas. Scientific name is Burkia africana, and this is one of the trees where we can use the bark. If we break down this bark and we crush this bark, we can use it as a poison to kill fish in small ponds. The fish are still edible if you've done that. It's only just starting to push out new leaves, but as you can see in the background, still very dry, no green grass, no greenery to be seen yet. See, as we're walking here in the veld, here's some droppings. Bushman is telling us that those are the droppings of a blazebuck, small, medium-sized South African antelope, brownish in color, with a white dash across the face. Very pretty little buck. A lot of them walking around here. That big tree there in front of us that we're going up to now, it's called a valboom in Afrikaans. Scientifically, Terminalia sericea. Also typically grows on deep sandy soils, and usually these trees grow where you have water relatively shallow under your sandy soils. See a nice big tree, no new leaves yet, but despite of that, still a very shady tree. It's also called a sandgeelhout. It's got a very hard yellow wood which works very well. We also use the roots of this tree to make a concoction that you can use to treat stomach ailments. Seeds are flat and winged from side to side. Helps with the distribution of the seeds. This is one of the most prominent differences between this species and our combretum species, where our combretum species has 4 veins instead of just the 2 veins that the Terminalia's got. This tree that we're walking up to now, with the blue purple flowers on it, it's not an indigenous tree to South Africa. This is a jacaranda. Scientific name Jacaranda mimosifolia. It's a tree native to Southern America, but has been brought into South Africa many years ago due to the beautiful flowers that it makes. Pretoria, one of the main cities in South Africa, is also named the Jacaranda City. due to the huge amount of jacarandas growing in Pretoria. And this time of the year, when it's flowering, you've got streets that turns purple with all these flowers. But it is an exotic, growing in the veld wild here now. Interesting to note that the jacaranda is also one of the first trees to push out leaves, one of the first trees to push out flowers, showing just how well it's adapted to its new environment in South Africa. The wood of the jacaranda tree is very soft, whitish in color, and often used in Africa to make spoons and forks and bowls from, because it can easily be hollowed out. Here's a nice close-up of one of the bunches of purple flowers. Beautiful flowers, nice and fragrant as well, draws a lot of bees. Here we are coming up on another dung heap. All of this is dried animal dung, and this heap is very typical of impala dung heaps. Impala tend to defecate in one place, thus making huge concentrated heaps like this. One of our next trees that we have here, these trees usually are smallish, oftentimes growing more in bush form than really in tree form. This is called a sickle bush, or Digrostachus cinerea, the scientific name. Never grows very thick branches. It's got a dark brown hardwood, very hard, used for making poles because the termites don't eat them so often. These thorns that you have on here, very hard, very thick, very strong thorns. These thorns very easily puncture any type of tire, even military vehicle tires. On the pod here, where the name comes from, a sickle bush, the pods form that typical sickle curl. The herd of blazebok moving just ahead of us. It was the dung that we saw about 50 meters back. They were lying flat in the long tall grass. Here, with a couple of albinos in there as well. Slowly moving out to where they feel safer. You can see the very distinct white blaze on the front of their heads. Very similar buck to a bontebok, although the territories does not overlap. The bontebok occurs more down into the Cape Province and into the Free State. Bunch of males and females, no young ones as yet, still too early in the season. The next tree that we find here is the common hookthorn, or Acacia caphra. Also a smallish acacia, still referring to the old name groups of these trees. Common hookthorn, see, very typical of the bark, these long stringy pieces. Very seldom does this become a big tree, but you very quickly learn to recognize it in the veld by the droopy way that the leaves are hanging. Small, very fine compound leaf with lots of fine pinnae on it. Also one of the first trees to push out leaves when the summer comes. A couple of dry pods sitting here. Pods are used by animals as fodder as they fall from the trees. You can see here underneath this tree lots of places where the animals stood, laid down. And they typically come into the shade and after the pods that's fallen down.